It was the week before Christmas. A little boy was finishing kindergarten. For several weeks, he'd been working on a small ceramic dish to give to his father for Christmas. On the last day before the holidays, the little boy was running along the kindergarten corridor while trying to put on his backpack at the same time. And in the process, he slipped and smashed the carefully wrapped gift he'd worked on with dedication and love. After a few moments, the little boy realized what had happened, and he began to cry uncontrollably. Fortunately, the little boy's father was there to pick up his son, and he knew exactly what to do. He swept him into his arms and shed a few discreet tears with him. And the father whispered to his son, "Let's pick up the pieces and see what we can make out of what is left." The little boy stopped crying, and with his father picked up all of the pieces and went home. Today, in a very real way, people's lives are in pieces. There are lockdowns, restrictions, and curfews. There is death, illness, and suffering. Families are grieving, jobs lost, and people are struggling to survive. We're isolated, lonely, and afraid, and children can't go to school. Our lifestyles that we've enjoyed so much for so long have been drastically curtailed. No travel, no parties, no eating out, no doing what we want when we want, and no worship. Wherever we go, even for the simplest of tasks, we have to wear a mask, wash our hands, and stay apart. But it's not only COVID that is shattering lives and reducing them to pieces. There's still no justice for the Easter Sunday bomb victims and their families. Husbands are beating their wives. Girls are being used by men as sex slaves. Drug trafficking is rife. Corruption is rampant. And this island's beautiful environment is being decimated by greedy development. And don't forget Afghanistan. Lives utterly in pieces. Wherever we look, not only here, but across the world, lives in pieces. So when you look around, it's easy to feel distressed, overwhelmed, and frustrated. It's easy to feel angry and depressed and hopeless. It's easy to stop caring, to lose faith, or simply give up. But the story about the little boy and his father is a parable of God in our lives, especially at this time. God, who is like a father or mother, comes to us and places God's loving arms around us and picks us up and says to us, let's pick up the pieces together and see what we can make out of what is left. Sure, things will be different. Pieces may not fit perfectly together. Pieces might even be missing. But together with God, something new can emerge. It mightn't look like what we'd imagined. It mightn't be what we really want. But something new can emerge. But we need to be open to God's presence and God's caring and guiding hands. If you don't believe me, go to the 24th chapter of the Gospel of Luke. The story of the two disciples walking away from Jerusalem to the little town of Emmaus. And think of that time after the crucifixion, everything. Everything is in pieces. The apostles, the disciples have fled. People are hopeless and in despair. They cower in fear. All that they had given to Jesus, the lives they had devoted, suddenly it all is gone. Nothing makes sense. Life seems to be not worth living. And these two disciples flee from Jerusalem to try and escape the pain and the helplessness. But what happens? The stranger comes, the risen Christ. The risen Christ comes to them in their experience, in their pain, in their loss, in their hopelessness. And what does he do? He lifts them up and he holds them close and he walks with them and he breaks open the scripture and he breaks the bread. And suddenly things begin to make sense. Everything that had happened on Good Friday and after the death, suddenly it makes sense. And there is hope. There is new life. There is possibility. There is potential. But yes, it'll be different. And the risen Christ, in picking them up, helps them to pick up the pieces. And they return to Jerusalem because they're new. Christ is risen. And they quickly go back into the mess. And they share their experience of the risen Christ, who has surrounded them with his love and helped them pick up the pieces of their lives. Something new has begun. Jesus may no longer be with them as he was, but the risen Christ is now present, and everything is different. And those two disciples, they say to themselves, "Didn't our hearts burn? Our hearts burned with life when he opened the scriptures and broke the bread." And he picked them up, and together they began to build something new. Trust the past to the mercy of God. Trust the present to the love of God. And trust the future to the providence of God. And together, pick up the pieces, and together with God, see what we can make out of what is left.